Hello, and welcome to the Leisurely Learning EquatIO series. In this series, we will go over in depth how to use the various parts of the EquatIO extension to best support your students. In this video, we will be reviewing all of the features available in the equation editor. Let's get started. All right, so here we have our first question, and this is a fairly simple question. It's an elementary school type question. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to open up the equation editor. So the equation editor is the first button on the toolbar. It's represented by the sigma with kind of the cursor, and I'm going to click on it. So the important things that you need to know here, first of all, at the top, there are these three dots. This allows you to enlarge the size of the box if you want to. So you have more space to work. Depending on the size of your font, you may want to do this. The X over here on the side allows you to close that equation editor if you want. The other way to close it is to simply press on the button that has the blue line on top. That closes it as well. Down here on the right, you're going to see this little green guy. Most of the time, he's going to stay green. Sometimes he'll turn yellow if you're doing something really complex. And if he turns red, it means there's an issue with the programming piece around what you're doing. So the first thing you need to remember is that you want to actually click in the box here where it says start typing, because otherwise when I start typing, nothing actually appears. So we need that box to be blue. Now, if I was going to actually answer this question and I knew how to find the area, I could simply type in A equals, and I go 32 times 12. Now, a couple of issues with this. The first one is this X here is not actually a times symbol. It's an X variable. So we actually want to get rid of that. The other issue here is the spacing. So if I go in here and I replace that and I start typing in the word times, because we turned on that math prediction piece in the last video, you're going to get these choices. So you're going to have the choice of using an X or using a dot. So it's totally up to you which you prefer. You can choose that. So when you use that predictive piece, you're going to notice that it gives you that nice spacing in your question. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to go to the end of the line and we're going to hit enter. And that's actually going to give us another line. Now, if we didn't know what the equation was, because we turned on the formula prediction last time, I could come in here and I could type in area. And when I do that, it's going to give me a list of area formulas that it has. I can click on the formula that I want and it writes it down for me. Great for students who struggle with memory. So I'm going to replace those numbers with, I'm going to use the dot this time just so you can see that. I'm going to replace those variables with numbers so you can see. Now, the other thing you're going to notice is when you do this and you've put in a second line, you're going to see a series of buttons appear here. These buttons have to do with alignment. So the first one is the default. Everything aligns to the left. The second button aligns to the center. The third aligns to the right, and then the fourth aligns to the relation. So it's going to try and line up the equal signs. Now, what it's actually doing is it's making this into columns. So you can see that all of the columns are right justified. So if I went in here and I centered it, it would get a little bit better. But what I can actually do is come in and on the next line, if this is super important to me that the equal signs line up, I can go to new column and I can just cut the math piece from here and paste it over here. And there you see that it's lined up. Okay. Again, if this is something that's super important to you, I highly suggest that when you give the questions to the students, you do this for them, because this is an extra cognitive load that you don't really want them to have to do. The next button is to add a new row. Now you can either add a new row or you can hit enter. Both of these things do the exact same thing. All right, so now let's take a look at another prediction that we turned on, and that was chemistry prediction. So here we have an example of some chemistry that we have to do. So I'm going to open up this prediction piece, and again, you probably only want to turn this on if you're actually doing chemistry. But if I needed to actually write out these equations, instead of trying to remember all of these symbols, I can simply start typing them. And then if you've ever had to work writing equations on a computer, you know how hard it can be to do the subscript, superscript. So I just start typing in the word subscript and it comes up, and then I'm just going to type in solid. It brings up that solid state for me. Now, when I want to bring it back realign, on my keyboard, I'm going to press the right arrow, and that's going to bring it back up in line. I can press plus. I'm going to put in nitric acid. Okay, and I've started typing that so I can go down. I'm actually going to put in another letter here just to simplify that a little bit. I'm going to go subscript again. I'm going to type aqueous. Oops, didn't do the subscript there, so let's fix that. There we go. Now I need that arrow, so I'm simply going to start typing arrow, and it pulls in that right arrow for me. And I can put in nickel, and I need nickel nitrate. And just to save some time, I'm just going to do plus and hydrogen. And you'll notice that you get the standard hydrogen, and you also get the diatomic hydrogen. Where you might need that standard hydrogen is, of course, it's impossible to put every single chemical formula that exists in the world in here. So, for example, acetic acid is not in here. So if you had to actually write that yourself, you have the option of putting in those variables for you. So this gives me a beautiful formula. It puts it in here. And then all I need to do, I'm just going to hide this, figure out where I want it to go. And then I'm just going to hit, and you notice I don't even need to reopen that insert math, and it puts it in there. All right, so now let's start talking about what some of the other buttons in the equation editor can do. So I'm going to come over here. I'm going to go to my equation editor. I'm going to turn this on, and I've already started this question for me. Now, let's say I wanted to really emphasize something in here. So I wanted to really emphasize that this C here was important. So when I select some text in here, you're going to notice that this text color button shows up properly. So I can press on that, and I can choose a color, and I can color code this. And of course, if I copied this down, it would have copied the color for me. So I can go in and color code things as I would like. Okay, to emphasize things. Now, the other way to emphasize things is to come over to the More button, and I'm going to press this More button here. And inside of here, you're also going to notice a series of other buttons. So for example, I can select this and go to More, and I could bold this. I could select it, and I could go to More, and I could italicize it. And I'll do that one more time. I'm just going to select it, go to More, and I'm going to underline it, just to emphasize that this is what we're looking for. The other buttons that you have here, so if I was going to go in here and subtract this, and I wanted to show my students that I was crossing that out, I'm going to select this, I'm going to go over here, and I'm going to go to the next button, which is strike through. So that will actually put a line through that, so my students can see that that's stricken through. Now, the next button here is, of course, the square root, because that's a special little button all on its own. So you can either type in square root, or you can press this button here. It's totally up to you. So that one did it that way. If I wanted to go over here and type in square, you can see I get the square here, or I can even do the short form. It will put in the square root for me. I didn't like that 5 out here. Okay, so you can do that. Now, I'm going to insert this. I'm going to come in here. I'm just going to trash this here. I want to show you some of the other functions that are in this More button. So I'm just going to go over here. Now, the next button here is symbols. So if you couldn't remember the name of a symbol, so for example, let's say I was comparing the numbers 12 and 9. And I know that the alligator needs to eat the bigger number, it needs to eat the 12, but I don't really necessarily remember what that's called. I can actually go in here, and it's going to select it for me. I'll make sure I'm in the right spot, and I can put that in. And then it actually prompts me and helps me learn that this is called the greater than. So it adds that reinforcement piece to it. So it has this. It also has some standard layout stuff. So if you were looking for subscript, superscript, you couldn't remember what that was called, it's in here. It also has in here some great layouts if you were doing multiplication or addition or subtraction. It's got some layouts for that as well. The next button is this one right here, and this is formulas. So this has a ton of formulas for math, also for physics. So if you were looking for a particular formula, you could do that in here. One of the things to note is these ones here, they write them as law of sine instead of cosine law or sine law. So just something to remember. Now, if there was a formula in here that you wanted, but it's not there, what you can actually do is you can create your own formula list. So let's say the thin lens equation. So the thin lens equation isn't in here, but I want to create it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to write that equation. So I'm going to go 1, And to get the fraction, I'm going to hit the slash key on my keyboard. That's going to give me that fraction. I'm going to go D, and I'm going to go subscript, and I'm going to go object, so I'm going to put in an O there. And I'm just going to use the right key on my keyboard to bring this all the way over to line up. I'm going to go plus 1 over, and I'm going to go D, and I'm going to go subscript. And I'm going to go I, and I'm going to go over again, equals 1 over D, 1 over F. Okay, now if I want this equation, I'm just going to get rid of that so that doesn't get pulled in there. What I can do is I can actually come up to this heart button, and I'm going to add this to my favorites. So I'm going to press this button, and what I'm going to call this is the thin lens equation. I'm going to hit save. And so if I trash this, and now I want that equation back, instead of rewriting it, I can go to more, and I come over here to the end to the heart, and I can scroll down, and here is my equation right here. And so it will pull that back for me. So even though that formula may not be in there, you have that access to it here. So these are the features of the equation editor. If you have any questions, be sure to use the link below to access the EquatIO video question form. Be sure to leave an email so that we can respond to your questions. Thank you for watching this video.